Hey everyone, can everyone hear me? Can I get like a thumbs up? I see some movement. Awesome, thank you. There's a camera at the back, so I can see some movement. Awesome, thank you everyone for joining and being a part of this panel. Even though it's digital, we've been able to wrangle some really awesome production type people from all around the world in this digital panel. I know most of the talks and panels are in person, so the fact that you're here listening to this digitally means a lot to me and the rest of the panelists. Because last year at last year's NZGDC, it was mostly digital. There were lots of digital chats. So this is the exception this year. But we couldn't have done this in person anyway because we have people tuning in from all over the world. So first, I just want to go around the group and get interest from everyone on what your role is, what company you work at, what city you're in, and what's your favorite type of beverage, whether you're a coffee, tea, or a green tea kind of person. So starting with you, John.
Hi, my name is John Lindvay. I am the producer at Red Hook Studios. We work on a title called Darkest Dungeon. I am currently living in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. I recently moved here 2019, right before the pandemic, which was exciting because I came here to work in the office and then I worked remote for 3 years. Favorite beverage? I'm a cappuccino guy. Like I really like a good cappuccino, not too much milk, because like the lattes and all that stuff is just too much fluid. You know, I just want to keep it nice and light.
Awesome. And Zia.
Hey, I'm Zia Schlosser. I'm a project manager at Digute Fabric. I'm also juggling a few more contracts on the side. I'm in Melbourne, Australia. Some of you might know me from New Zealand. That's where I used to be. And favorite beverage, I really like coffee. And recently I found out that you can do a cold drip with sparkling grapefruit juice, and it's amazing.
Oh my gosh.
I had that and it's really good.
Awesome.
Right?
Over to you, Claire.
Kia ora koutou. I'm Claire Barilla. I'm the producer here at Riff Raff Games in Wellington. I was literally at the conference like an hour ago and I just wandered back to our office to do this panel. So hopefully I'll see some folks later this afternoon when I come back. My favorite drink is true Wellington fashion is I like a cold brew or cold filter with coconut milk, even in the middle of winter.
Nice. And Ed, over to you.
Hey everyone, my name is Ed Lago and I'm actually from Brazil, but I'm currently living in Vancouver Island in the beautiful Canada. And I work for Cloudhead Games as active producer. And we're currently working in the Pistol Whip. That's our main game right now. And my favorite beverage is definitely coffee. I'm definitely a coffee person. Coffee for the win.
I see a trend with coffee and producers. Over to you, Veronica.
I'm Veronica Pestriano. I am the director of production at Systemera, and we make Astroneer. We are located in currently way too sunny Seattle, Washington. Temperatures we're not used to up here in the Pacific Northwest. And even though I'm not from the Pacific Northwest, I continue the Northwestern and production tradition of coffee being my favorite beverage. Hot all the time. Don't care how many degrees. Hot coffee. That's me.
Awesome. And just quickly, my name is Carl Leduc. I'm games producer at Altered State Machine up in Auckland. And yeah, my favorite beverage is probably, I'm drinking a coffee right now, but I'd say tea is my favorite. I try to drink tea more than coffee, but during those heavy sprints, I think I'm maybe a couple coffees deep every day. So that's kind of interesting that everyone likes coffee. I wonder what that statistic is like globally for all producers, and if you just have to like coffee if you're a producer. Awesome. So first question that I just want to ask is, we have a varied type of producers, people that manage other producers, people that work on different platforms like VR, people that work on projects that are live, some that aren't released yet. So these questions, the aim of this panel, it's called the State of Game Production in 2022. It's going to be very kind of broad, fun. We're going to touch on a bunch of different topics and interesting stories, but we won't really go very deep on a certain topic. So this panel will hopefully just give you an overview of what it's like to work as a producer in the industry at this time. And there's definitely a big conversation about remote work and COVID still in the air, and it's been several years now. And that's what I'm really curious about is how long we're going to be having these conversations for until the new normal is actually the new normal. So a first question I just want to ask that I think is really important for any producer or any production team is how you communicate on a daily basis. There's asynchronous communication and synchronous communication, and lots of different tools that are popping up. And I think this would be a good time to just kind of raise any interesting tools that you're using in your teams, or any kind of processes that you think work really well to create like an efficient workflow between your team. So if anyone wants to jump in, just kind of something that works well and how you communicate well with your team at the moment. You go ahead, John.
Oh, go ahead, Veronica. I want to hear what you guys say.
I was going to say that I think for all of us, Miro has come out as this just dark horse app that has taken over a lot of the collaboration and communication. I think it's replaced what I think most people were concerned about losing, moving to remote work and distributed work, which is the opportunity for folks to get together, ideate, brainstorm, leave notes, because everything else up to this point that we've had has felt really formal. It's been Jira tickets, stories, documents, design documents, production documents. But Miro has given us this very light touch, kind of more collaborative, more creative tool that you can use both in person, over the shoulder together, or remotely. I think that's been, the biggest thing that I've seen come out, and one of our biggest and most used tools.
Yeah, I think the whole whiteboards is a very big trend that, a lot of Google's doing it, Zoom's doing it, Figma is another one, Calendly just released a whiteboard kind of feature. And I think that's really interesting. Just before I ask if anyone else has any thoughts, there's two things I forgot to mention at the beginning. One is if you have any questions for any of the panelists, please, I've got the app open up here and I'll have some time at the end to go through those. So if anything interesting comes up that you'd like to ask, please ask a question. And the second thing is, I believe there's live transcripts at the bottom of the screen. They are a bit janky, I think, but at the end of the day, try not to. Yeah, I think they're better than nothing, and I'm really happy that they're there. But apologies if there's anything there that doesn't make any sense or misses the mark of it. I just wanted to point that out because some people might be religiously looking at it, and I think it's doing its best. So on communication, what other tools like Slack or Discord are two other very popular ones? Anything else? What do you use, John?
So we use Slack. We've entertained, or I guess people have tried to float the idea of the Discord, but I've kind of quashed it just for Discord. I feel for us kind of came up a bit too late in terms of it's more like our community-based tool, and everyone's has their personal that's their personal chat protocol for their groups of friends and things like that. And I think having the nice thing about Slack is it's very a formal piece of software, and not many people use that to hang out with their buds. And so there's a nice mental disconnect of when you're switching modes from work to friends. But I did want to mention something about Slack in particular, because having to rely on it more now that we're all remote has actually raised a lot more concerns and problems that we have with asynchronous communication, and kind of it demanding more attention than it deserves at times. I don't know I'm sure maybe others have stories about this, but a lot of times what will happen is you'll have a comment or you'll find something and you want to dig into it. Hey, does anyone know about X, Y, or Z, right? And then all of a sudden it will snowball into this hot button issue as if this is the priority of the day, when it's really not. And there's you lose out on tone and tenor and what people are trying to deliver. And so we've actually been trying to work a lot in terms of getting people to one, stop using DMs for things that aren't pressing as a means to prevent people from feeling like they have to switch to an issue or jumping around to put out fires. And then two, trying to make sure that everyone understands that if you're not a stakeholder, an immediate stakeholder in the feature or the topic of discussion, to try and give space for those people to discuss first before like other people pile on. We don't necessarily want to like silo people out, because that's not great either. There's great value in having visibility across all departments and letting people see those discussions happen. But there is a little bit of like foot and mouth syndrome that happens when people don't like understand like, hey, you're kind of just muddying the waters by diving in and trying to contribute to the conversation. Like what you're saying is interesting, but like let's wait until there's like the appropriate time for that, which is like, it's a communication process. So it's like a soft skills tool that needs to be established, but it's been a growing kind of issue and things that we've actually had to wrestle with more deliberately than we've ever had to do in the past.
Yeah, I think you could probably speak about Slack etiquette and best processes for a good, like that's the whole panel probably could have been surrounding that.
You see like the one little red notification, you're like, well, I gotta go respond to it. I gotta look at it. When it's like, no, like if someone just came at my desk and said, hey, you got a minute? I'd be like, no, I'm busy. Like come back in 5, you know. But like because it's there, you know, and our monkey brains are like see things flashing. We're like, gotta click it, gotta click that button.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Zia, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think what has surfaced Slack or Discord communication the most is that there needs to be a really good transparency. I've seen often, you know, groups starting group DMs when it could actually be in the channel that is associated with the topic. And it would have saved a lot of like middle management and middle communication and, you know, doubling the information. Also, as you mentioned, Slack etiquette and just like in general, like general tidiness, you know, threading conversations, tagging the correct people, etc. I think that's incredibly important and definitely makes a whole lot of difference, just sticking to some norms, I suppose. And one thing I found out, just touching on John said, we often just preface our message with don't have to act right now, or this is due next week or whatever, but I'm just dropping on a message because I just gotta get it out of my chest or whatever, you know. But it's good to do these things. And my studio, Digute Fabric, there is a lot of asynchronous communication because they are in the UK and Denmark and other places in Europe, and I'm obviously in Australia. And so often I do work till midnight, but they still often work later than that. And I found that the schedule button on Slack is really, really good. But then it's good to just like put a little clock on your message so people know it's actually scheduled when they get to it. So little things like that can like make the communication a whole lot of transparent and just easier to navigate.
Yeah. There's some really good advice, actually. A lot of people, don't use Slack to its best ability. When they add new features, it takes a while before it gets widely adopted. And I think scheduling is one of those things that people probably don't know the extent that it can be used. And just putting like an emoji in front of a scheduled message is a huge extra bit of communication that could really help. Claire, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think we might be the only one among us that don't actually use Slack. We use Discord. And I have actually used Slack quite significantly for events that I've run in past. And I don't really think that one is like stronger than the other. So I don't really have any like strong hot takes on Slack versus Discord. But I think that the reason why Discord works really well for us is because it has a lot of like the ingrained features that you would do that you need for like streaming builds. Because we have a staff base that is, all over the world, it's very helpful. And that's like the room that I'm in now. It's like our streaming room. We use Discord to like stream builds and playthroughs and stuff to people who are overseas. So we actually had like a pretty big build week last week. So it's really useful being able to just like stream directly from Engine. I've never tried to do that with Slack, so I can't say if it can or not, but that's probably been one of the best like features of Discord for us.
Discord hands down has the better streaming suite in terms of
cool.
So like we will sometimes use Discord for when we're trying to do demos for like remote people, which is funny, right? But Slack has their new thing that's really great is like the huddle thing, which is just for like quick breakouts. Has been nice, but sorry.
And,
I think one of my features I do like about Slack is I feel like their thread feature's a bit better.
Yeah.
And that reminds me, Slack has the little pen you can draw in meetings, and it's so good.
That's nice.
I'm not
Discord,
familiar with that.
if Discord adds it, then they have the best like streaming suite possible because then you can draw and do everything. Yeah. So like on a Slack vid call, you can like screen share and then other people can draw on your screen and like leave notes. So it's great for passing things like creative directors and things like that.
Ed, as someone who works on a VR title, I'm curious to know if there's any kind of VR communication tools that the rest of us can't make the most of, but you've found to be more efficient. Like what do you use at Cloudhead Games?
So to be honest with you, because we need to be on headset pretty much every day, we avoid using VR for meetings. It's not only the weather as well. Like summer right now, it's super painful to be in headset, but there is still not a really good app to be doing social interactions. For funny enough, most of our team is actually on Discord because of the stream feature that John was saying. It's pretty much the best tool we have to. You can actually cast what's in the headset in the browser, and then you can share the browser, so everybody can actually see each other play testing. So most of our team. The pandemic was actually kind of a blessing in disguise because Cloudhead was hybrid before, and there is a lot of people who were working remote who was not happy because a lot of our conversation was Slack and in the office, and some decisions not communicated properly. So since we went full remote, we actually pushed the team more and more to be more visual. So they actually using less Slack, and every time there's decisions, they actually produce like a doc or a Miro board that can be shared for everybody. So speaking of best practice, here's a good suggestion for everybody. Last month, our general manager and RT person, they actually did a workshop, and now the specialists in Slack, and they made a big training for all of us in the team. Like there was this 1 hour of best practice, and it was super helpful because we learned so much. There's so many things you can use Slack, and you actually can be certified about that. So just a suggestion for everybody that there is a lot of things you even don't know, and someone can actually bring and explain to everybody. But yeah, most of our communication is really quick conversations Slack. Then if it becomes a bigger meeting, it goes to Google Meetings. But play test and just people hang out and showing their work is Discord. So you are in headset, but showing what we're playing, but not meeting a headset because sadly there is still not a really, this is a good software to use in VR.
Yeah, that is really interesting. On that kind of just thread of communication, one question I was wondering is, as studios become fully remote and kind of really leaning into remote work in order to get talent that might be outside of their cities and things like that, a question for you, Zia, is working for a studio that is on a completely opposite time zone. Do you think that time zone is a barrier to hiring, the best talent in the industry? Do you think it is kind of localized to best to hire people that are within your time zone if you can? Or do you think that that's a problem that we will, find a way to work with, is like someone that has a complete opposite time zone?
That's such a loaded question. Honestly, I think, so there's multiple parts to that. Definitely having good preparation around what you're trying to achieve and good communication helps blur any time zone barriers, for sure. For me, I work nights, so I work like 5 to midnight or similar to be like in the same time zone as UK and AU or similar at least. And for me, that's actually great. I finally get a daylight to myself to just live my life. And I love it. I wouldn't, and I gotta say, like being in an office, and I have experience of being in office 9 to 5, 9 to 6. The time that I spend at work after those hours seems so much faster as well. And I am a night owl of course, getting like past midnight is getting really damn hard. But even just the evening really, really, really works great for me. And there might be a lot of people that works great for. There might be people that are morning birds and would rather, work really early in the morning. It becomes difficult if there is people in all different time zones and they have to get into a meeting like this one. I can imagine it's some quite not that great hours for some of us. For example, like having a meeting between Australia, America, Canada, and Europe can get pretty difficult. But yeah, I think it's up to individuals and how they like to work. There might be folks that like to work weird hours. There might be people who would rather not, and therefore they have to find a job that's closer to their time zone. But I don't think there should be a barrier to hiring. I think it should definitely be a conversation. And often we don't really need that much in sync time, depending on what your role is and how you need to collaborate. But the more flexible we can be as human beings working together, I think the better our projects will be, because we'll get this giant variety of people and experience. And yeah, I'm loving it. I'm loving working evenings. It's great.
Yeah. Awesome.
But for social life, I never see anyone who hangs out in the evenings, but that's what weekends for.
Exactly. Yeah, I want to move on to a completely new topic just so that we can keep the conversations fresh. I think, there's more questions and areas that we could have gone deeper on, but unfortunately, with the time that we have, I'll just keep kind of jumping along. One thing that I think will be really valuable to talk on is production tools or production management tools like Jira and Confluence. I use daily, and that's for documentation and tasking. I'd love to know if there are any other tools that people use within the games industry that they recommend or that they think are up and coming, or even that they use adjacent to Jira and Confluence to help them. I know there was like a Gantt chart tool that you mentioned, Veronica. Just anything like that. Does anyone have any other tools that might be worth mentioning?
One that came out for us, one of the producers on my team found is Retrium, which is a retrospective software. And I know a lot of places have it, but for us, we have found it really useful to hold, again, like hybrid style meetings where you maybe have some folks in the office, you maybe have some folks coming in, and their whole... a lot of the premise that they're based on is psychological safety and anonymity, which a lot of other tools don't actually provide. You have to sort of, I wrote this thing, or it's kind of easy to find who wrote what. But with Retrium, you can submit things anonymously, you can vote on them anonymously, and that preserves kind of, the intent is that people are more honest, more open. We have found it useful for other things. We use it to collect playtest feedback. We use it to collect like document and design document feedback asynchronously. We found that it's a great asynchronous place for folks to put their feedback together, and it still gives us all of the same tools to kind of lump like things together, to vote on things and plus things that we're really excited about, and then export it out to our various, you can like export it out to Atlassian products now, which is pretty cool. So it can tie a little bit deeper in. So it's been interesting also that we kind of have more tools now that do one, maybe two jobs, versus before I think we all were trying to like, Jira does all the things or Atlassian does all the things, stay in the ecosystem. But now you tend to have a little bit of different things for different purposes. And I have at least found, in my experience, people can chafe against it a little bit because you don't want to have to remember where do I put things. But to ease and bridge that gap between remote folks, long distances, we also have folks all over, in different time zones. People are slightly more willing to try a thing if it's going to enable that communication, that planning, that document and requirement gathering, iteration, feedback loop. But yeah, I just wanted to give some props to Retrium because it's been amazing for us.
Yeah, awesome. What was the name of that Gantt chart website as well? Because I thought that was neat. Just to
I will find it real quick.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other tools, Claire?
Yeah, we use Notion. So we actually were on Confluence for a while, and then we made a test switch to Notion and loved it. It's a little bit like Miro, but for docs. So kind of like Google Docs, but more. you can kind of see where people are doing, where they're editing. So it's a little bit more interactive. The other thing that I really, really love about it is the fact that you can really nicely embed in Miro boards. It takes a little bit of like setup, like it is there natively, but if you like, because of the privacy settings on Miro boards and stuff, so like there's a bunch of like backend settings that you can put up that allows you to like see Miro boards in Notion, and it also like allows you to cross-reference Jira cards as well. So it takes a bit of setup, but I really have enjoyed using Notion. And the other main one that we really have been kind of like, we kind of experimented with Notion in project management for a while and then switched back to Jira. So I wouldn't necessarily say that Notion is perfect for project management at all. Like it's got a long way to go, but it's very, very good for documentation. Like in terms of like a place to host documentation, and it's extremely useful for cross-referencing.
Yeah, awesome. And emojis from what I've seen. There's lots of emojis in Notion. John, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, so obviously we're talking about like the bigger suites, right? So like Jira, Confluence, and things like that. We mentioned Miro, which is really great for like whiteboarding. We've found that the design team has been using that a lot more. I don't necessarily use it for production planning, anything like that. But I did want to give a couple mentions to for smaller size teams, because I think once you reach a certain scale, Jira just makes sense just for easier tracking and the longer chain of commits and chains of issues you want to keep referenced. But I kind of missed the days of Trello. Trello was great. It's so light forward, just a Kanban board and a can-do attitude, and you just get it done. So I don't want, people should remember that still exists. And if you're like a smaller team, like under 10 or like maybe a little bit like between 10 and 20, I think that's a great little tool. It's really lightweight and you can sort of set up however you want, which is great. The one that I was evaluating for a little bit that had we not gone with Jira right away, I maybe would have tried to pitch it, is Codex. I don't know how many people are familiar with that one, but it's interesting. So I think some other, like a lot of these software tools, like game developers tried to make a game, and then I don't know if it necessarily took off, and then they had these cool software tools that they've been marketed. I mean, that's what Slack is, right? Slack was, they tried to make an MMO and they had a chat protocol, which is a great tool, like whatever. But Codex is kind of cool. It's very similar in terms of like you're building decks of tasks, and then you sort of use this like kind of decks of cards and terminology to sort of help you track how features are progressing and things like that. I liked the interface. I liked sort of how it was set up, but we had already started pre-production, so it was like kind of too late to do a switch. I'd be interested in maybe like seeing if we do like a small game jam or prototype phase that I could try and check it out a little bit more thoroughly. But it looks cool, so I would toss it out there for anyone who's sort of like shopping around and looking for a smaller, lightweight. Because Jira is kind of a thing, it's a whole ethos that you have to sort of like begin, and life is short, close your tasks, all that stuff, and you're going to have to just deal with all that jank and jargon. And so maybe you want to like save some gray hairs and go with something a little bit more lightweight and not so serious. Yeah.
It is interesting though, because trends happen quite fast. A couple of years ago when Slack kind of emerged, like Miro, for example, I don't know if a year ago anyone mentioned that, whereas it is on the top of a lot of people's minds right now. And I'm curious to know in the next year how much further along we're going to explore these tools as ways to communicate. So moving on to another question, and talking about like a more digital future that we're going in, I'd love to know if everyone still uses a notepad and pen. I think this is a really interesting question, if people have kind of moved their note-taking and reminders digitally, or so it looks like everyone's kind of got notebooks. Is anyone in the call an advocate for digital note-taking and digital reminders?
Hey.
Okay, go Claire, and then John, you can speak on it after.
I mentioned earlier we use Discord, but I use like a personal Discord channel that I have just to myself for like all my notes and reminders of things. And I've got like different channels for stuff as well. So it's like literally just me in this Discord. It's me just talking to myself, like putting all these things in these channels, reminding myself of things. And I got a bot as well that reminds me of things. And it's because I'm always on Discord. So I'm always like on there for work. And so I've just got my own channel that has all my reminders and all my links and all my things that I need to do. So I love that.
That's awesome. And John?
All right, probably going to be a heathen here, but my desktop is littered with .txt files, just a date, a name, and then in there is just all of my shorthand that then gets converted into like full-on Google Docs that then get distributed or then converted into tests or into emails for like, here's the actions from our meeting. For a while, I was using Google Docs, but then like that's fine. But there's nothing short than just quickly have a keyboard shortcut, open up text, just and start jamming down. Even now, like before this meeting, when you're starting to go over, like, here's the agenda, I'm like all in a text doc. So it's all there.
It is faster, isn't it? And
it's so quick. And then if I don't need it, just delete it. I don't care about it anymore. It's gone.
I don't want to see your desktop. Just throw it all into a folder. Zia, what do you use?
I was just going to say, I actually like my Kanban board. There's must do this week, then things that aren't urgent at all, and there's just a thought dump. And then there's a done. Great. And it's great. Anything I need to ask, anything I need to remember, whether it's a task or just a thought, it just goes there. And sometimes better than a notebook, as much as I like just pen and paper.
I mean, as much as I raise my notebook proudly, I also have a OneNote.
Yeah.
That is daily notes on OneNote and a personal Trello board. So.
The craziest one I've heard is someone would email themselves, and then they got an app that could like have them remind me, so the email like it will like forward it back to them like in 3 days, and like to me that's too much. I'll take my notepad and text documents. Fine.
I think the greatest thing I did was divorce myself from email as much as possible in the last 5 years. It's made my life so much easier.
That's a good trend, I think, as people are moving away from emails. And I think it's usually the producers that try there's some producers out there that use email as a primary form of communication. And I do think that that's on the way out. I think that's a trend that we can be sure, no one's mentioned email at all during this panel so far. It's definitely on the way out. John, you disagree?
I want to hear Veronica sing, but I have a funny thing with emails that I would like to,
I just a quick thought is I love all the different options because it speaks to everyone's different communication styles, right? And like, isn't that what we as producers think about all the time? How do I talk to you? How do I talk to you? How do I talk to you? What works for you? I work with a producer who loves email because of the way that it allows them to structure their thoughts and get things out in long form and sort of leave it for people to process when they're ready to process it. And it's great because it's not for me, but it works for others, and that's cool. And I just love hearing everybody's ideas because it just speaks to, how we are all really here to just enable a lot of different humans to make one thing together.
So, like at the start of the call, we talked a little bit about like the issues with Slack and like the drive for instantaneous communication. So like what I started kind of embracing a little bit for things where we were planning meetings, like we were like, hey, we're going to have a meeting soon, but here, like rather than like dumping it in Slack where like here's the agenda or here's like sort of the preamble that we want everyone to digest, we've been moving those to Google Docs and then trying to dispense them via email. So that way, again, like Veronica says, like when you get an email, like the etiquette or the social norms aren't that you have to respond to it immediately. There's usually like a 24 to 48 hour window where there's like acceptable response time to an email. And so for things that don't demand an immediate decision-making point, I think email is great of like, hey, here's a dump of information that I need everyone to sort of get through at some point. And then at some point when everyone's had a chance to read and respond, we'll book a meeting and make a choice. And so I've been trying to use that. It's also really great for like office announcements, right? Like, hey, here's the holiday PTO stuff. And like doing it in the Slack is one thing, but then it gets buried over time. Like there's just all information coming all the time. Whereas emails, like those broader company-wide things are a lot easier to like disseminate. But emails suck, right? I'm not going to lie. Emails aren't great. Like my inbox constantly has like 500. It's whatever.
I remember we set up we set up ShotGrid, and within like 24 hours of setting it up, I had like 300 emails that ShotGrid like there's and like Confluence as well just sends me just like and I could set it up in my notifications to not email me, but I just don't care about email enough to it just starts piling up. But yeah, that's interesting.
Most of the time, I just use my email address to sign into apps.
Yeah, that's true. That's what email addresses are for now. I use a Gmail to sign into my iCloud account. So that's all emails are good for. One thing I just wanted to mention, the Gantt chart tool that I mentioned earlier, Veronica messaged it to me. It's Tom's Planner. So if you're wanting to create a real quick Gantt chart, Tom's Planner is really great and easy to use and simple. I just wanted to mention that. We've mentioned some really great tools in this panel, by the way, that anyone listening would have so many things to investigate. So I really love that. We are kind of slowly running out of time, and one topic I do think would be fun to talk about is the topic of fun. Obviously, working remotely, you want to connect with your team. You want your team to connect with each other. I'd love to know what some of you do for fun in terms of things that aren't directly work related, but as a way to kind of bond with your team, whether it's like team activities and things like that. What does anyone do that's interesting that could be worth sharing with everyone else? Ed?
I'm gonna jump here. We do have a group of people inside the company that we call the Culture Club. And this is our CEO, general manager, and some people from the team who spending the time to actually help us as a studio to do things together because, we're full remote. So we have a lot of different things like niche talks, lunch and learns. Sometimes there's movies or people playing games on Discord, but this group, they always come with some things. And because we're doing this live game, we always have milestones from time to time. So there's always celebrations going on. And usually these are the people, like when they see the team, we can feel when the team is a bit quiet or they're a bit tired. They try to create things in the channel. Like one of these days, people are starting making funny things with one of these AI tools that is the big new thing now. And then, this big conversation started, everybody had the mood lift. So this is a good thing to do. Like if there's people inside your company that have the energy to spend the time to invest in their culture, that's cool because in the end, everybody's so busy with a bunch of different stuff. But we know that group of people, they always thinking, okay, what else we can do this month to celebrate? And this could be just a day to celebrate anything, to be honest, but always thinking about the human side, right? We even have now, I think they say in English, Mindfulness Day.
Yeah, Mindfulness Day, yeah.
Yes, so this is awesome. Like we're actually asking the team, it's super optional, but stop, take a break, go to this thing here and relax. So all these little things that usually we'll not think because we're so busy with our work, it's all thanks to the Culture Club. So just a good suggestion to have people, thinking about the human side of the team.
Yeah, a bunch of things that I just want to rattle off that when we kind of prepped for this that people mentioned were like tabletop simulators, playing Among Us, playing Fall Guys now that it's free, doing game jams within your team. That could be really valuable from like a company perspective as well. Playing games like Jack in the Box. On any of those things, is anything anyone wants to? Claire, you have something to say?
Yeah, that's like all we do. Like even when we're in office, like we'll have a couple of the people who are like working from home, and they'll join us playing Among Us on like Friday drinks. So it's more often than not like after sprint review, like we'll have like a charcuterie board and some drinks, and then like we'll play either Jackbox games, which some people like to like spectate and join remotely. We also have a bunch of people who play Tabletop Simulator. So I think the most popular game is like One Night Ultimate Werewolf. They often play because it's really easy because you just got to have your headphones on and you just can't see other people's screens, which is fine. And then Among Us as well. Like those are like the three main ones that we play almost weekly or bi-weekly.
Awesome. What do you do, Veronica?
We also have a phenomenal studio ops manager that helps us with a lot of these things. And, I wanted to kind of plus what Ed said is just having the people in the studio that, I think at least as I was coming up through production, a lot of those things tended to fall to producers, especially women and female identifying folks. And, actually engaging the team and asking them to say like, hey, what do you want to lead? So for example, our studio ops manager started this started this thing in the studio called affinity groups, and that allows employees to kind of choose, what they want to do and kind of get together on similar topics. For example, not kidding, right before this, I was DMing a D&D campaign for our TTRPG affinity group. But there's also ones for, activism for parents and caregivers, for LGBTQ plus folks, and allowing kind of independent activities to also pop up that aren't always organized by like some central authority. And I think enabling folks to self-organize and entertain themselves, however it is that they want to entertain themselves, I think also leads to kind of enabling everyone to feel like they're part of creating good culture. But it's also great to have folks that are truly passionate about it and can kickstart that and light that fire.
Yeah. Zia, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I want to diverge a little bit here. It's not actually a fun thing, but it's something that the studio I work for has introduced. And it's, I think, an incredible resource if you want to give your staff any benefit. And that is this app called Spill, which is actually a mental health app. And behind the app are actual trained professional mental health professionals who and the app has all of these different things, like you can book a one-on-one in-person session, you can get a really thoughtful reply on some of your issues you have. They have all of the different apps for managers, how you can check in on your team, etc. It's a really incredible resource, and I'm super grateful that we have it. And in a time of COVID and everything that's going on in the world, I feel it's incredible thing to give to your staff if you can.
How do you spell that? Sorry.
Spill, like spill the beans, like
okay.
SPILL.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's awesome.
They're currently like UK time based, but I think they're expanding. And if there's anything else similar to that, I would recommend looking into it.
Yeah, I feel like this might be something that becomes more of a trend. Maybe there is like it could be Spill, like that really impacts most studios around the world, that they just kind of include that within their fleet of software and things that they use that solve specific problems. And that is something I haven't seen much of in the last couple of years, but with the increased amount of remote work and mindfulness and personal development and things like that, this is definitely a space that kind of needs that player to take ownership of. So that's really cool.
Did I say?
Yeah.
It has a Slack integration.
Awesome. Yeah. And that's the thing, is all of these apps, whatever becomes a trend in the next year or two, like there will be integrations between Slack, between Jira, between Discord. I think that's one thing that I don't see often is a lot of Discord integration with a lot of apps, that might be something Discord does in the next year. And if they improve their threading feature, they'll probably change a lot how people use them. So yeah, that's really interesting. We're kind of running out of time, and there are a couple of questions that I want to ask from the audience. So if you are in the audience, do you have any final questions? Now's the perfect time to ask. I'll just read these off, and then someone can jump in and answer it. So what sorts of things do you use for informal catch-ups and general connection / getting to know team members? It can be a struggle when remote working. So things informally, what does everyone use?
So we tried an app, a bot thing that you could get in for Slack. It was called I think Coffee Time, or where basically everyone would sub into a channel, you join into it. So it was opt-in, which is great. I think that's always very key, that these sort of endeavors need to be opt-in. And at the beginning of the week, you would randomly pair people up, and then they would have to schedule a time to do a coffee, get your coffee, sit down and have a chat. And that worked pretty well for a while, but with COVID, it was still pretty hard to get people to opt in, and I don't know, it was. I know some people use it, but it was just a constant struggle to try and get more people to partake. So I think it's tough what is going through, and it's been exacerbated by the nature of the world as of late. But the one thing we've encouraged, which is I mentioned it a little bit earlier, was that huddle feature on Slack. I think anytime you're having a conversation, even if it's more than a few sentences, just hop on a quick call. Like, you don't need the voice, you don't need the video. Sorry, you can just have someone else's voice. And the other cool thing about the huddle feature is that it broadcasts it, right? Assuming you're doing it in like one of the public channels, it broadcasts, hey, like John and so-and-so are talking. And like, so for us, we do all these like tiny breakout channels for feature work. So like, oh, we have a new feature, so we'll make a new channel just for that feature to focus on it. They're like, oh, John and so-and-so are talking that, and then they're like, hey, can I hop in? And yeah, hop in, listen in. It's a big deal. And so that little connection helps a lot.
That's a great answer, John. And I'm going to move on to the next question. Sorry if anyone else wants to add to that, but we've only got a couple more minutes left. Next question is, when we refine sprints into daily tasks, it starts to fall apart when things take longer than expected. Tips to getting those daily schedules together. So advice for refining sprints into daily tasks. Does anyone have any advice that they could share?
I think that one thing that we always try is like, oh, we can have kind of every single day mapped out, and that gets really challenging because you don't know what's going to come up, especially when you're in an iterative part of the process where newfound work can come up. What we've found has worked is instead treating, at least for our group, is treating time as a bucket and saying, hey, here's where we want to be at the end of the bucket. And rather than trying to opt for very clear daily tasking, like I need to be here at the end of the day, it's I need to be here at the end of the week, or I need to be here at the end of the sprint. And that can surprise you positively, where sometimes people have time left over and they can move on to the next thing. Or it allows you to feel really clever when some unexpected iteration comes up and something takes longer or newfound work has happened. And it can still feed into that classic sprint or Scrum style where at the end of the sprint, you reevaluate, adjust things, pull in new work and replan and kind of cascade that down. So I think for me, I found that not stressing so much about the daily, but thinking more about the sprint or more about the milestone can help that be more predictable.
That's a really great answer. Thanks for
Here.
Yeah, big agree. Like being more goal oriented than like task oriented is super important.
And use story points for sizing days.
Story points,
for a while we switched off of time and we went to points, and that worked really great. We eventually had to switch it back because a rest of the team couldn't grok points, which is unfortunate because the programmers loved it and it worked great for them. But yeah, because like if you're managing time, then you're managing wrong is kind of like an axiom in the production community, and I think it's true, right? Like we want to be thinking more about like where do we want to be.
Yeah, we've been using story points as well. It's been really helpful. Like no more time or days. This is not a good way of tracking tasks.
Effort. It's all about effort.
Yeah,
we use time, but we know it's not real time. It's fancy. It's like fancy time. It's like time.
This is one day.
That's interesting. Awesome. And last question that's come through. I love that answer, by the way, and it made me realize we haven't spoken much about like on the ground production advice, things like that. So I'm really glad we at least had some advice that came through on that topic. Last question is, how have teams integrated goal setting within developers to help them skill up in a remote environment? Often important for PMs to plan for PDs. Goal setting within developers to help them skill up in a remote environment. So I guess like training. Yeah, go Ed. Yeah. What thoughts do you have?
We just started a professional development day at Cloudhead. It's actually been 2 days we did that. So basically now every lead knows that everybody below them, they have 1 Friday of the month to spend in anything they want to research. So 8 hours of the day. So basically everybody can do that in the studio, by the way. It's the leads as well. It's just that I'm thinking more in the people who usually don't have a lot of time to think about what else they want to do. But we make sure the leads talk to everybody in the one-on-ones to like, what else would you like to study? And then the company basically make a lot of things available, like masterclass, course, workshops, GDC Vault access, books, digital books, and all that. So there is a little bit in the leadership management side that's make sure push the team to remember PD Day is coming next week. Make sure you want to know where you want to focus. So with now everybody knows in the calendar, the next 6 months, we have a specific Friday. We are avoiding milestone deliverables close to that. So everybody's feeling more like, okay, I know I have this day to prototype something, to study something that I don't know, maybe research another engine. So you need, when we present the new schedule for the next 6 months of the project, they know we have these little gaps that they can take a break and focus on professional development. So this needs to be hammered down in their heads, like way before, so people have the time to think about, okay, what else I want to research.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's kind of all the time that we have, but is there any like very quick other addition that anyone else wanted to add? We're good? Okay, awesome. Well, yeah, go John.
One thing. So we recently, as a company, we started offering education credits reimbursement to everyone on the team. So every year there's like a certain allotment, and it's pretty substantial. And so we're encouraging everyone to sort of like seek, take extra college courses, and that doesn't even necessarily have to be game dev related. Like, hey, I got a liberal arts degree, and it's been proving me very useful. So I'm a proponent for liberal arts.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Great little message to end on. I think that is another really interesting topic that we probably could have talked at length to. But I do really appreciate all of your times and all of the topics that we spoke about today. I hope it was valuable to those in the audience. Please let us know. On my Twitter, @CarlsContent, my pinned tweet at the moment is all of the handles of all the panelists here. So if you want to go follow them and engage with them, feel free to go do that. And if you have any follow-up questions about the projects that they're working on or just production in general, feel free to reach out to them there. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. So, yeah, thanks.
Thanks,
for tuning in.
everyone.
Thank you.